know who you are targeting. We would like to begin by thanking you all for being the part of 17th Marketing Conclave. Before we kickstart the discussion, we would like to thank our cloud communication partner, Root Mobile, session partner, IAB Tech Lab in partnership with PubMatic, gold partner, Logicsub Digital, session partner, Agraya, and knowledge partner, Kantar. Without any further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our esteemed speakers, Ms. Soumya Mohanty, Managing Director, Clients and Quantitative India Insights Division, Kantar, Marte Albert, Chief Revex Officer from Revex, Vivek Pandey, Chief Operating Officer from Ghana, Amitabh Pandey, Chief Consumer Strategy and Planning Officer from Diageo India, and Rubina Singh, Country Manager from Versa Innovation. I welcome you all. Over to you, Ms. Soumya.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here to spend the next 30-40 minutes discussing a very interesting topic, which is, do you really know who you are targeting? And that's pretty much the classical question that all marketers have grappled with from a long time, even pre-digital era. And the way we all learned marketing was about classical FMCG brands trying to target the top of the funnel with mass marketing, very well knowing that there's going to be a leakage, and they still do that. But with digital first brands, with services, with more niche brands, I think we have evolved and we have come a long way from that time, and with many different ways of targeting. So without further ado, I'll get directly to the questions. And the first question that I have is around, how do you actually define your target audience? How do you go about that process? And what are the different targeting approaches that you use to do that? And Mathis, I'll start with you and then I'll probably go around the room.
Thank you very much, Soumya, and thanks for having me here today together with the remaining panelists. So at Revex, given that we are a programmatic performance DSP, when we're being asked about targeting, we immediately think about data, because of course we deal with a lot of data in the sense of that when we see consumers, when we see people, we see them first as data points. Let it be because it's the third-party data or data out there in the ad exchanges, in the bid streams. Because every time we are on a mobile device or on any other device that is connected to the internet that offers ad space, we are appearing on ad exchanges because these ad spaces are being automatically auctioned and sold. So this amount of data is very large, and this is like from the ad exchanges. Then when we think about first-party data, it's data that is being generated and collected by, for example, advertisers, where consumers have decided, for example, to download an app and to use this app and then to perform certain actions and to share their data basically and their behavior with the offering that is on the app, which is a product that I'm consuming basically. So in the course of this, we are all, as users, generating data, and then these data streams are also being processed in a platform like Revex. Here, I know we are also going to touch on the topic of privacy, so I'm addressing this maybe later. But when we think about targeting, of course, it's all about which type of targeting touches the right users with the right ads, so that a certain outcome is being delivered, which we call performance, but we can also name it value exchange. No? Ideally, there's an offering that comes to the right consumer, and the consumer says, hey, this offering, great stuff, I really wanted to know about this, where can I get this? And then interacts and engages with the advertisement that then leads to, for example, through deep linking to another app where this offering is available. Right? So this is the idea. And then when we think about improving this targeting, of course, we are very data-driven, because given that we are dealing with data, and the data doesn't represent to us a consumer that we can see. So we have to take a data-driven approach, and we have to understand basically what these data points mean. How does, for example, device ID that represents a consumer signal to me that something is potentially relevant, and this type of interaction between an ad and a consumer makes sense. So this is something we need to work on every day, so that we basically create value for both the advertiser as well as the consumer, and that we drive meaningful campaigns.
Brilliant. And then you said something very interesting, that consumers are sort of data points for you. So I'm going to probably, try and ask Amitabh to build on that. So how do you take these data points and make them into human beings, Amitabh?
And I think therein lies the answer, right? I think for us, I think I come up from a world where I think it's what's behind the data points, and I think that is what's more powerful, because I think at the end of the day, we're in the business of, I think, speaking to human beings. And I think going behind what I call from moving away from big data to perhaps small data, if you could call it that, derives much more powerful understanding, even from a targeting point of view, because at the end of the day, what's behind that screen is a human being with flesh and blood. My family, my passions, my motivations, the reason I'm alive, my purpose in life. What do I do at the end of my day? How do I feel when I'm putting my son to bed? Those kind of motivations and needs and moments and occasions. I think that's really the world that kind of I thrive in when I think of targeting consumers. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliantly put. So, Rubina, you want to add something to this, and where do you stand in this data and human being and this whole conundrum? If at all it's a conundrum, I don't know.
I think it's a blend of both. At Josh, we're a short video platform, and we target. We're a platform which is for everyone. Like we say in India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, for them, for people who are young, people who are older, people for men, women, people in urban areas, but also in middle India and rural India. But also, what is also important for us is, while doing that, to understand. What we've realized is that we need to understand these consumers using data as well. For instance, where do they come from? What kind of regions, states, cities, neighborhoods, etc. Even up to neighborhoods. What is their behavior like? Why do they use us? What is it that they're consuming on our platform, really? And we try to break them down into small cohorts and understand them using sophisticated data techniques which are available. That is what we do on one hand. On the other hand, we're also a little bit classical, where we've been doing a lot of on-ground engagements. For instance, we did one in Gujarat where we did about still 60 on-ground engagements to meet in 60 different cities in Gujarat, right? To be able to understand these customers so much better. So I think for us, it's a blend of both, using technology and quantitative data, which is available, along with a bit of, qualitative understanding, as well as driving insights out of that. So that's how
Absolutely.
we look at it.
Yeah, very interesting. I think there is a, as Amitabh was also saying, and as you were saying, there is a big data part of it, there's a small data part of it, there's a quantitative part of it, and a qualitative part of it to bring the consumer alive. Vivek, what's your views on this?
So I think from our perspective, both from Dana and the larger rest of the businesses within TIL, I think two major pillars that we sort of live and die by. One is, of course, consent. I think the need to know basis, that I think all the changes that are happening in the ecosystem, I think all of us are aware of that. I think we ask ourselves a lot these days. In the past 1 year, I think 1 or 2 years, it has really picked up in a big way, that how much do you really need to know? I think we have reached a point where, through your own data as well as data partners, there's a lot that you can actually end up knowing about the customer. But how do you, what do you really need to know? And I think that's what we sort of focus upon a lot. You have 50 data points about the customer, and we ask our marketing teams and the product teams, okay, you can get to know what's the date of birth of this user, but can you really give him value back in return for that, right? So I think that is very fundamental for us, that data availability is no longer a problem. But its use and making the consumer feel that he has gotten value back in return for that data is very important. And second, of course, is a first-party data strategy. Not just for ourselves. I think every business out there understands that your own data is supreme. Your own direct relationship with the customer stands above all else. And anything else that you pick about the customer from any other third-party data source is always, you have to discount that a little bit. You can use that as much as you want, but I think, the reason why we invested in a TIL-wide DMP, Ghana also has its data going into that DMP. And, the first party data, the direct data that we collect from the consumer, we sort of value that maybe 10x more than any signals that we get about the same consumer from third-party data platforms. So that's where we stand on that, Soumya. I think consent, utility of the data, being very selective about it, and a very focused first-party data strategy.
Brilliant. So, Amitabh, I'll actually come to you after that because most of the brands here are actually digital first brands or connected in some way. So Vivek has all this data with him to be able to mine and use, which I'm not sure the extent of that you have. So how do you, how do you really what is your targeting strategy therefore? How do you, I'm asking this question, do you really know who you are targeting? Let's actually use this question now and go around the room.
Yeah. So you're saying when we don't have access to first party, right? I mean, I think yeah, it's not an either or, right? I think we need both. So I think most kind of conventional, let's say the industrial era organizations which I belong to, manufacturing classic organizations, I think even they are very actively building, we're all building our own first party data, right? That is the holy grail, like Vivek said. Totally agree. The value of the first party data, absolutely agree. It's easier in some industries, like some of your industries, harder in industries like ours, especially heavily regulated industries like ours. So the short answer is absolute value in building first party data with consent, with a value payback, but very in the meantime continue to rely on third party data, but use it in the right context. I think that's how we kind of, so I've lived and used third party data all my life. And I think my learning is that any data is only as good as the context and how you use it. Otherwise, it's all the same. So there can be great value in the third-party data if we are asking the right questions and kind of mining it in the right way. So yeah. So while we build over time, someday we will get there, Vivek, where you are in terms of first-party data access. But in the meantime, I think we continue to heavily rely on third-party data. And I think the other bit is possibly our own. If it's super fast processed collective data brackets in good old intuition. So I think not to underestimate that, because I think intuition is nothing but super fast processed data, right? Which is just collective experience, and not to end. And I think there is a magic in the collective experience and intuition of people having lived and breathed through a certain system and an industry, and that's data as well, which I think is super valuable that we rely on. Yeah.
So Matish, coming back to you, I think this, how do you know you're targeting, and I always feel online the amount of wastage that you have and the kind of I'm not terribly sure that we really are able to track them and really land. And I'm coming from a very classical market research background, so pardon my asking this question. How do you do that, and how do you convince your clients? I mean,
yes, so I totally sympathize with you. I come also from a very classical marketing background, Kotler and the 4 Ps, sometime in the 90s, and I think my final paper was about opening a bar, right? So here back to Amitabh, basically. So I really resonate with the idea of this one-to-one, and I often give the example as well, because digital has opened all gates to massification, right, of advertising, of digital advertising, right? So we need to understand how this keeps checks and balances on what the consumer actually wants. Because an example, right, I go into a store, right? Normally people don't want to be sold. They want to have the freedom. They don't want to be harassed and pushed, and they want to get an overview, and then they have a demand, and then they want to be consulted and serviced. So people value actually service and that things are custom. I go into a hotel and people kind of know me, and they know I like this type of room, and I like to have whatever, like a cake when I enter or something like that. So customization, first-class service is being appreciated. How do we deliver it in a meaningful way so it doesn't become something like harassment in that sense, no? Because this has been a lot of discussion about advertisement in general, no? Because I think it overstretched in terms of exchanging volume with quality, no? And I think there's a strong trend toward, for a decade at least, back towards quality, because the consumer doesn't accept volume. Yeah. So this is where we come back to the value exchange. Yeah. When can I meaningfully approach a consumer that sees an ad, basically, and basically keep this in checks and balances now. And there's an initiative, for example, I read this a few days back. It's called No Easy Way in Europe, which is about not prohibiting, for example, non-targeted ads. Yeah, where we come back to the part of the data, no? Because advertising will continue, the inventory will be offered, it will be sold for XYZ, and then people will see something, right? And because nowadays the objective is make advertising relevant and attractive, make it part of content, so people like to see it. You know? And this is something that is not new. It is something that is very old already. Is this type of approach, blending it in, making part of the content. And I think this is where we need to go to. And for that, we ultimately need data. And some people say we need less data. We might actually be arguing that we need more data to make sure this relevancy is there, right? And there, of course, we need privacy laws, and we need to make sure the data owners, which are the ones that are emitting data. So I am emitting data the moment I'm opening, as I'm sharing my data. So I'm the emitter. Then there's a recipient and collector as well. So we need to make sure that all of these parties are acting responsibly and are using the data also in the right way. Then we will have balance, and then basically this ecosystem will continue to thrive in a meaningful way.
Yeah, makes sense. Rubina, I'll come to you on this question of when we target very sharply, and which is what digital allows us to do, and especially for both Rubina and Vivek, you are in the content sort of content place. How do you build serendipity into it? I mean, when I'm listening to music or when I'm watching video, how do I may want discovery. So how do you really allow that to happen in this sharp targeting?
So I think, I agree with earlier what Marty was really saying. I think we're in the content business as well. Let me give you an example at Josh. The reason why we're doing so well, people are sticking on with us and spending, maybe over 30 minutes in each session is because the content that we are providing to them is hyper personalized, right? So depending on what they're using, what they're viewing, where they're spending time, we are trying to use that data to understand their preferences and serving more. And that is why I think they're enjoying that experience, and that is not kind of scaring them or it's consent driven. So they choose to tell us what they like, and we're serving them content accordingly to their preference. And I think as we go forward as well, brands will have to look at not just using data. Often, I've been on the other side as well, and it's easier to create those micro segments and the cohorts on one side and say that, okay, let's, target them. But unless you have the right content to marry it and provide that experience to the user, it gets very, very hard. So if you're able to also, at our platform, even when we are marketing to our consumers, for acquisition, etc., this is something that we are very conscious of to make sure that we use we couple the marketing message with the user cohorts very well, to get the desired results. And I think going forward, while privacy is going to kick in and there's going to be a cookieless world, etc., I think brands will need to employ a far more wider variety of technology to have multiple other data sources to be able to discover the consumer's interest, to ensure that their advertising cost is still effective and efficient on digital.
Yeah, Vivek, you want to add something to this?
So Soumya, I think I heard 3 points. I'm just going to address them one by one. I think you asked, how do we decide who to target? Whether the person we are targeting, is that targeting accurate or not? And lastly, how do we sort of make sure that serendipity also keeps happening? So I think how do we decide who to target? I think that's very feature to feature, content to content kind of a thing for us. There's we are no longer a product. I think, we look, at least we consider ourselves more like an audio platform. So everybody is a customer, right? Everybody is a target audience. You are my target audience. Marge is my targeted audience, and so is Rubina. But it's the content that needs the audience. So whenever we are putting out a content, at that point of time, relevant to the content, we look for the audience. That's how we approach. So it's not a product to audience targeting. It's more a content or a campaign to audience targeting. That's number one. Secondly, in terms of the accuracy of the targeting, as I said, the moment I'll go back to the original point I made, that what you really need to know, what's relevant. Once you narrow it down, that comes down to hardly 2 or 3 very important features that sort of override everything else. And those 2, 3 features, if you know accurately enough from first-party data or third-party data, as Amitabh said, my point was nothing against third-party data. The reliability on first-party data is much higher because we have collected it ourselves. But at times, there are things that we need to know that are not available with us. So we have to go to a third party for that. But there'll not be more than 2 to 3 parameters for any targeting situation, and hence we are able to arrive at them at a reasonable level of accuracy. If there are certain situations where there are like 6 to 8 parameters of targeting, then of course we understand that it's going to be very probabilistic, and we understand it's a risk. So the investments are graded up, and you don't sort of put all eggs in one basket in that kind of a situation. Coming back to the third and the very important question you asked, which is how do you handle serendipity, in this era of targeting? And I think that's very, very central. I think all the digital companies, all the digital content companies are really targeting. It might be one of the top 3 problems for all of us. That there is this tendency to lock the customer inside an echo chamber. That I'll push this onto you. Then you will watch it, and then I'll label you, yes, you watched it, then I'll give you more of this, and then I'll give you more of this. And then after a while, you get bored of it, right? That, I'm like, please show me something different. Please don't show me what you know about me, right? Everybody wants a little surprise at some point in time. And fortunately, I think, data science has matured to a point that there are very stable, good algorithms for this kind of a thing. So we deploy them. There are things like, I won't go very technical here, but, there are things like multi-arm bandit strategies where you can define both these as objectives. That, on the one side, I wanted to give you more of this, which is called as exploitation, that I'll give you more of what I already know about you. But then there is another objective of exploration, that I'll throw some random things at you once in a while, which may be loosely related to you, and then even more loosely related to you. Sometimes not related to anything that you have seen at all. I'll see how they succeed, and then it evolves over a period of time. So I think we are fortunate. I think this question asked 10 years back would have been a very tough question to answer. But I think fortunately we are at such a stage in AI and data science right now that there are algorithms that can take care of serendipity as well as sharp recommendation, and we follow those very standard principles. Always making sure that the customer engagement metrics are high.
Yes, I learned these 2 words, exploitation and exploration. So
I tried hard not to throw any more, but
I don't know what exploitation and exploration is in the Alcobev category, Amitabh. Maybe you could put it in some kind of a framework. But coming back to you, from industrial era, as you put, an industrial era marketer, how have things evolved? How have you seen, you have a pretty long career across industrial age companies. So how have things evolved? And is this things that you're concerned about in this evolution process?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And thank you for calling me old in a polite way, Soumya. Just kidding. But yeah, before I answer that question, I was smiling away when Vivek was responding. It's like it was in my thought, and he said, when you ask the question, in this age of very sharp targeting, how do you ensure serendipity? And in my mind, I was going, I'm sure there's an algorithm for that too. And and that's exactly what Vivek said. And in many ways, it just sounds so oxymoronic, right? It's almost like I will have an algorithm to enable serendipity. That just sounds oxymoronic in a way, right? So it's fascinating. It's like Black Mirror deja vu. Anyway, but to answer your question, Soumya, I think the changes over the years, I think a couple of things, right? I think, again, the personal perspective, what I've seen over the years is I think there's this, obviously, digital, quote unquote, digital, has obviously been the big transformation, right? That's the cliche. But I think I've seen perhaps maybe 3 phases of change in my head, if I were to oversimplify it. Phase 1 was where what the hell is this digital hocus pocus, complete disbelief. I remember the days when the Facebooks and the Googles of the world used to kind of knock at our doors in the good old PepsiCo days, and we didn't have the time of the day to give them, right, because they couldn't show us GRPs and all that stuff. And complete disbelief, right, at that point. So that was kind of phase one, where I think a lot of us, from a targeting and a consumer point of view, spent a lot of time on understanding the why and the who and the demographics and the psychographics, the motivations, the occasions, all that kind of stuff. And digital was just like, what do you know, right? And then and I think from there, and it's interesting, it's almost like the phase two is a 180 degrees, right? Almost like now we're at the other end of the spectrum, where that's all there is. I mean, I can tell you with 100% accuracy what my consumer is doing at what point of the day, what is he buying, why is he doing that. It's like 100% complete knowledge truth. I mean, it's almost knowing that complete confidence on knowing everything I have. It almost scares me, right? At some points, like saying, how can you be so sure? No, of course, here's my CTR data and the VTR data, and of course we know it, 29.2%, right? So it's almost like we've gone to that other extreme. And a lot of the new brands born into this world are kind of totally in that game, right? But human beings are smarter than tech always, right? And consume, and people adapt to the environment. So I think now finally, I think what we're entering, what I feel is a phase 3, which is like Rubina said, a little bit of balance of both, because I think where you don't get into these boxes of there is traditional marketing and digital marketing and there's all of that stuff. There is only marketing. Right, and there is only marketing and building brands, and then everything else becomes a tool. So digital tech, etc., that you have are tools that allow you to do certain things that weren't possible before. Like, for example, behavior targeting, which was like the holy grail in the good old days, saying if only we knew what people were doing, then we could speak to them. And now we do, as more and more people live digital lives. But I think we're kind of now entering phase 3, because human beings are also adapting. Right, at the end of the day, people want to maintain a sense of their identity away from their behavior, right? There will be people, you will have your privacy moment, you will have things that you do not want to put out. And so people will find a way of adapting to this world and keep some cards up their sleeves, which no matter what you try, you will not be able to find out. And I think that's probably where I think this phase 3 is coming, where I think it's a more balanced, perhaps, approach of kind of having been through from one extreme to the other extreme. I think now we are kind of getting to this path where I said, best of both worlds, use what we can. How do we use this tool for this purpose, this tool for another purpose, and kind of then fundamentally build brand. And the one other thought I wanted to, as I was hearing Rubina and Vivek and Marty speak as well, I was thinking, in my mind, there's a differentiation. So that was the direct answer to your question, Soumya, just phase 1, 2, and 3 in that sense. But now parking that, I think making a separate point now. As I was hearing this conversation, one thought that stayed with me was there's a difference between transaction and building brands. And I think it's for us as brand builders and not just marketers. So not just marketing, but building brands. I think we are in the game of building brands, right? Not only transactions is a part of it. We want people to buy us, interact with us, download us, eat us, drink us, all of that. Yeah, that's part of it. But that's not fundamentally why people stay with us, right? I think if you're in the game of building brands, then transactions is only one part of it, where I can sharply target and give them the response to transact with me. That's one part of the story, but that's not the whole story. And I think the more we can kind of think of the whole story of what the brand means in people's lives, I think the more we'll reach this phase 3 of balance. I feel. So,
brilliant. I love the point of balance, Amitabh. And also, I was just thinking when you said behavioral targeting is what we all wanted, and now when we can do that, we are asking the whys and the motivations and worrying about, is this behavior actually because I wanted to do this behavior? So Marty, I'll come to you. Sounding very Orwellian when he was describing, Big Brother watching. It's slightly scary. How do I know it all accurately? How do you... being in the data business, I mean, you actually said it, right? Everybody is a data point for me. How do you...
I'm not getting out of that corner anymore.
You're not getting out of that.
I'm happy to take this role for this panel. No worries. Throw it at me.
How do you sort of bring this balance? Let's put it this way. How do you bring this balance? What would you advise?
Yes, I think there was some interesting input about like what ads people see, serendipity, and I mean, is targeting even there, right? We can question that. Yeah, if I do a recommendation of something to show something that people have not seen because we think we want to show them something else, and we see this, for example, let's say a product advertisement with 6 products, and then I look there and I said, yes, I added those to cart, and I looked at this, but this one is new. This one I've never seen before. So I see companies also like trying things on the recommender. And it's the same thing, right? So if we take it from that angle, I mean, does targeting even really exist, or what is that at the end, right? And if I don't like ads, maybe because I think ads are following me, why am I watching ads now? So I mean, it's like broader conversation now, but there's many angles how we can really look at this, no? And ultimately, when I think about a data point, or when I speak about the data point, of course, there's somebody creating this data point. And so this data point links to a device, and somebody's using this device. And actually today, I mean, we're using 2 devices or 3 devices. We're using lots of devices. And I mean, this data that is flying around that we are emitting is coming from our devices, and we are readily producing them. This is also something we need to, I think, understand when we think about then what we are expecting in terms of privacy. Because if I go to the bank and I'm opening a bank account, they will ask me a lot of stuff, right? And I have to give them a lot of information that is actually very, very private, and I share it with them, and then they see what's coming in, what's going out the whole month. Do I really want to share this with that bank? No, I actually don't want it. But wait, I'm using this bank account. I need that bank, right? So in the center of this is always at the end the value exchange. Yeah? Why am I using something for which I have to give information because I want something back that hopefully this information enables? This is the idea about data exchange, and this is how I need to understand what is my own personal definition of privacy. So 100%, let's say if we come back to advertisement, 100% ad privacy would be I don't see any ads. But then we come back to the times where publishers were trying to get subscriptions in order to sell their content and not show ads. And it's been a very slow but luckily gradual movement, right, in that direction, because consumers had been educated that things are free on the internet now. So this has been this value exchange again, like my data points, advertising, right? I get things for free. So this is something consumers have to get their head around. And I think in today's privacy discussion, where we think about ads that should target me, ads that should not target me, then do I want to see ads because I see them anyway, that then are irrelevant and maybe spoiling my experience? These are a few things, I think, where we still have to find balance, because these discussions are ongoing, and consumers that are decision makers, people like you and me, we are decision makers now. I mean, we are deciding whether we want to see something or use something. And I have an iPhone. I'm opting into everything, actually, out of 2 reasons. I mean, one is a professional one, of course, but on the other hand, I'm actually interested to see relevant offers, So that's my personal decision, and others take other decisions, no? But we see, for example, if we look at external, like the US, for example, with almost 60% iOS, we see that basically the opt-in rates are pretty good, So consumers are finding their way, maybe into some extremes, but ultimately there will be a balance. And it ties also back into the product, right? Is the product good enough? Can I really generate this value exchange? Are people finding this fair? Then they can also enjoy advertisement again.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting point, and the way you explain the value exchange and the fact that we are opting in and we are opting to share data in return for something. As a consumer, I'm still not 100% convinced, but I guess it's somewhere there in the back of the mind. You may not be able to tangibilize it. So, Rubina, I think there's an interesting audience question. Maybe I thought I'll just mix it up and I'll come back to the privacy question on, they're asking about how to find topics that my audience really cares about. How do I figure out what those topics are? Something that you would want to take as a question?
Yeah, sure. I think there is. I think it's a pretty simple one. It's a function of 2 things, right? One is, like I said earlier, is using technology, and there are lots of tools, and right from search, etc., which will tell. Google has a bunch of suite of tools which will tell you what is it that your audience is looking for directly when they're thinking of your brand, or when they're thinking of the category, or a little bit more laterally. So you can easily find that out. You also know the volumes, that what is it that they're interested in, and then you can have your communication around that. The other one is like what Amitabh was alluding to earlier, the classical way of knowing the product, having the consumer insight, and then getting that understanding along with the tools that are available, digital tools that are available, marrying both of them, and then start building your content and presenting it to consumers so that they find it useful and educative, and make it part of their discovery process.
Absolutely. I'm hoping it answered the question. I'm just keeping track of the time, and I hope I'm reading the time right. So the last question, I think, would be around the whole issue that we have all touched. And I'll start with you, Vivek. I think consent. You said consent is one of my pillars. And obviously that means privacy. But we did also speak about using the data in many different ways. It's still a conflict in my mind. I'm still not clear how both work together. And do I really know the consent I'm giving when I opt in for any of these services? How do you think you will navigate that going forward? And also the whole cookie-less world, if that happens, if at all that happens.
Yeah. No, so Soumya, I think there's a very big gap, like a crying need of customer education and awareness. I think, businesses can do only so much. At times businesses get blamed a lot that, businesses, there is data companies, there is platforms that they're collecting so much of data. But if you look at, the various laws that have come up and the way these businesses have evolved, everybody actually has taken a lot of precautions, have put out a lot of features and given a lot of control to consumers to manage their data, decide what they want to give, what they don't want to give. So apart from maybe there will be maybe a single-digit percentage of businesses that are still doing some unethical practices, but I think everybody by and large is now ethical about data collection a lot. I think what is missing is that the customers are not aware of the power that is there in their hands. And that is a very big question I think that all of us have to answer. Should businesses come together and take such kind of a educational awareness initiative? Should public policy makers or government bodies get involved in this kind of an initiative? But I think that has to be a very major program, at least in a country like India, where you're talking about tier 2, tier 3 cities, where people are just learning how to use a mobile phone for the first time, and expecting them to be able to control their data and leverage all the tools that are given to them. I think that is, I'm really, as a business leader in this space, I am really looking forward to such a massive campaign at scale where consumers are made aware that you have control. Nobody can steal your data if you don't want to. You can manage your data well. I think that education is the only big gap that I see right now.
Makes a lot of sense. Martins, you want to add something? I think Amitabh has lost connection. So we'll wait for him to come back. Yeah, please go ahead, Martins.
Yeah, just maybe very briefly that I think the awareness is coming with consumer education while they're enjoying their experiences. And I agree, like a good product. So I would much more accept good advertisement of a good product, for example, that's meaningful, than of course bad advertising of a bad product, right? So the experience, the consumer experience is very important. We spoke a little bit about the advertisements, about recommenders or what they should recommend or what people want to see or that they want to have a change. Yeah. So we also consult our advertising clients a lot in terms of what the creative quality actually means. Yeah. So in terms of creative innovation, the formats, how do I get in front of people? Yeah. It's like I'm going to the shop regularly and the person that is basically assisting me is always wearing the same. Yeah. Well, at some point, or the display always stays the same. At some point, I'm getting really bored. I'm not visiting the shop anymore, and that's why there's a natural selection process, right? If the product does not, let's say, if it's the app product, yeah, or the website product, that doesn't evolve, if that doesn't change, that's not pleasing to the consumer. The consumer will stop to engage. So naturally, the tendency goes towards more quality on all ends.
Makes sense. Rubina, what are your views on maybe on the cookie-less part? Do you see that happening? And if you do see that happening, how will targeting happen in that kind of an era if you don't have first-party data?
I think then there'll be no option but to focus on first-party data. And I think, if you really think about the consumer point of view, I think a lot of large platforms have started doing that, giving the control in the hands of the user, to choose what they want to share and how much they want to really share. And I think that, as a user, it allows you to trust such brands and platforms where you're in control and you choose to share what what parts of your information that you really want to. And look at the brighter side of it as well. And there are lots of consumers who already enjoy it as well. How many times have you gone in to a brand, where you regularly interact, and if they already have your information and therefore they're able to serve you better vis-a-vis every time they're asking you for the same set of questions, and you having the pain of giving out that information again to make that transaction, let's say, for a small point of view. So there's always a balance. I don't think there is I think there has to be a balance, and the trust has to be built in. Brands have to be obviously very careful about how they use that data, and if they do so, I think consumers will trust the information that they're leaving with brands. That's
Absolutely. So, Amitav, any final words on privacy, cookie-less future, the way you see it?
Sorry, I think I had a little bit of an internet, so I dropped off for a minute or so.
That also happens.
That's probably the answer to the question. No, I think from what I heard, I think everything's captured. I think it's more. I think it's not about what's possible, but I think it comes back to the organizations and the line that I remember reading somewhere is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that's probably a little bit of the guiding principle when it comes to using data and this whole world of, for want of a better word, surveillance capitalism, if I was to call it that. So yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I think that's my thought.
So I think we're pretty much at the end of time, but very interesting discussion. I am not terribly sure whether we stayed on the topic of if we are targeting right, but we did cover a lot of things around it. The whole thing about getting a balance is what I'm taking away from this, the short and the long term, brand building versus transactional, but also the whole power in the hands of the consumer and the value exchange. We have to know what we are actually sharing and what we are getting in return for it. So Brilliant is not as Orwellian as we thought. There's a lot of good that's going to come out of it, and we work completely with you on that. And we'll have an algo to define the good also, I'm sure, one day. But real fun. This discussion was real fun, and I hope the audience had fun as well. So thank you everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Soumya.
Thank
Thanks
you very much.
everybody for the discussion.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for this lovely session. Thanks for being a part of 17 Marketing Conclave. And I would also like to thank our attendees who are here with us, and I request them to stay tuned for our next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should we just sign off now, or we just drop?